Hi, hello. My name is Liz and you're watching For Booking Out Loud. This video today is going to be quite a big one. I have finished reading the Rick Riordan universe, the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles? I don't know what you'd call it, but I've read 21 books in the last 3 months on the same world, universe, what have you. And I am doing a review on the whole shenanigan. It starts out with Percy Jackson and the Olympians. You go to 5 of the Heroes of Olympus, 5 of the Trials of Apollo, and then there's 3 others that may or may not be in this series, but Rick Riordan still wrote them. You have the Kane Chronicles, 3 of them, and you have Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. And I know within his writing, Riordan has also released the ultimate guidebook for all these series, I believe. I will not be talking about these. I honestly had forgotten that I own this, but it's pretty cool. I don't know. It's just a fun little guidebook on the myths that all these books are based off of. And then there's also like these demigod files, I believe, for every series. Again, forgot I owned this, but they're like little short stories for every series. I knew. I did not read this in the last 3 months. I think I owned it when I was in middle school. So there you go. So there's a lot that happens in these, so I have a huge write-up to make sure I don't forget anything. So please bear with me as I look down and read something or check my notes. Thank you. It's been 3 months, so I might have forgotten a piece that I wrote 3 months ago. Forgive me for some things. Okay, so you start out with Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. And Riordan actually wrote this series because his son was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, and he wanted to write a story where his son could see himself in the main character. Which, yes, awesome, do it. It's amazing background right there. So in this series in particular, the first one, you have Percy, who is a 12-year-old boy, and it's discovered that he is the son of Poseidon. So that makes him a demigod. And it's about his adventures with his friends. You have a satyr named Grover, Annabeth, who is a daughter of Athena, Clarice, who is a daughter of Ares, Nico, who is a son of Hades, Talia, daughter of Zeus, and you have this whole group of characters who go on these quests and adventures every year or so until about Percy turns to 16. And this is important because this whole series wraps around this great prophecy that was told in the 1940s during World War II about the big 3, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, not having any more kids because the kids would basically either save or destroy Olympus. And Percy, being a son of Poseidon, that prophecy could go to him. So you have the chosen one trope as well. And then you have Talia, daughter of Zeus, who the prophecy could go to, and of course Nico, who is the son of Hades, who the prophecy could go to. And again, you have Sea of Monsters, you have Titan's Curse, Battle of the Labyrinth, and the Last Olympian. who, guess what? The final battle happens in the last book. Go figure. This series is just a really feel-good, coming-of-age story, chosen one trope, and Riordan just has all these funny puns, and you really have a distinct style from Riordan. And you truly watch Riordan grow as an author while you watch Percy grow throughout these series. And I really appreciate that part of the book. Plus, I have a lot of nostalgia in these series just because I also grew up with the series. I'm gonna set this down. And honestly, you learn a ton of Greek mythology with it. It has the Minotaur, you have the Labyrinth, you learn the myths. You learn the myth of Icarus, you learn the Sea of Monsters, Sirens, the Golden Fleece. So many things, and to be honest, when I was growing up reading these books, I didn't even know I was learning all these myths, and then when I got to college and had to read Homer and Iliad, I'm good. Didn't need to, I still read it, but didn't really need to read it because I knew all these myths already, at least in a child's eye. So it does a great job on that one. And then Rick Riordan wrote the Heroes of Olympus as the follow-up series. And it happens about, I think, 6 months or so right after the last battle. And he decides to bring in Roman characters, or Roman gods. Which is an interesting topic, because if you know about Greek and Roman gods, they're the same, just slightly different, and they have two names then. You have, you know, the god of death in both mythologies. One's called Hades and one's called Pluto. So trying to do Roman was a bit confusing, even for me as an adult, much less a middle schooler trying to read this as a middle grade or younger. But Riordan does it in a very interesting way because the characters are just as confused as the reader. So when one character is like, oh yeah, Pluto, another character is like, don't you mean Hades? So in that way, it was a really perfect segue into another mythology. Now, the Heroes of Olympus is based on another prophecy, which is about 7 demigods saving the world again, point blank. And in that sense, you have more characters, and truly you kind of have 7 main characters in this series. You start off the book right off the bat by finding out Percy Jackson, this hero among heroes, has disappeared and hasn't been seen in months. And then this weird demigod shows up out of nowhere named Jason Grace, and he is a son of Zeus who's 16, and the prophecy should have happened to. And ironically, he has all these Latin Roman characters around him. He's calling all the gods these Roman names. And it's just a very interesting dynamic. And then you find out that Roman gods are real, and there's a different camp for these demigods on the other side of the United States. And then you get into the Son of Neptune, where it's Percy's side of the story. Percy has lost his memories, and he goes to Camp Jupiter, which is the Roman demigod camp. And he's now being called the son of Poseidon, and he's confusing everyone because he started calling all the Roman stuff Greek names. And so Riordan truly gives the reader ample opportunity to learn Roman names and Roman characters and Roman myths. And you get to know the new characters, right? So in the first book, you get introduced to Jason Grace, who is the son of Jupiter or Zeus, and coincidentally, Talia's brother, just on the Roman side. Then you also get to learn Pepper, who is the daughter of Aphrodite, Greek, and also Leo, who is the son of Hephaestus. And then in this one, you obviously have Percy, the son of Poseidon, not Neptune. And then you have Hazel, who is the daughter of Pluto, or Hades, but Pluto. And you have Frank, who is the son of Mars, or Ares. So that's 6 demigods. You have 3 and 3, technically. And then you get into the Mark of Athena, who is all about, okay, not all about, but really Athena, Annabeth Chase. And they go on a adventure all the way to Greece, which is kind of cool. They go abroad for the first time in this whole series. But honestly, this is kind of where I started losing focus in this series, and I just started not caring as much. I loved the first 2 in the series, and this one, it lost my interest, and I couldn't be invested as much. The characters were great, I loved their interactions, but things just started to feel like a callback to the previous series, or I don't know, it just felt so long and the chapters were so short, so it felt like going through a different chapter so quickly and then to not have any reward for finishing a chapter. But you had this one. Then you had House of Hades, and finally the Blood of Olympus, which is the final battle. Yay! 7 demigods fight for the finish and to save Olympus from the baddie. Decent series. And that leads us to the 3rd series, which is the Trials of Apollo. So during the Heroes of Olympus series, Apollo's Roman son was blessed and ended up fighting for the bad guy. So Apollo was punished to become mortal in this series, and in order to gain his immortality back, he has to prove himself in some way. And that's what these 5 books are about. So truly in these books, you're introduced to only 2 new characters throughout the whole series. You have the god Apollo, who also goes by Lester Papadopoulos, I think is his mortal name. Gotta love Rick Riordan's character names. And then you have Meg, who is the daughter of Demeter, Greek. So again, you only have Greek and Roman in this series. But as a fun side note, I feel like those 2 really merged in this series. Apollo is fighting evil Roman emperors. The idea that because Greek mythology and Roman mythology are kind of immortalized in mortals' minds, and they can still live because these stories are told over and over again, is true as well for these emperors. And so they're kind of like an emperor god or emperor immortals, one of those. And so these emperors are out to get Apollo, but truly to get Apollo's 5 oracles. And so throughout the series, it's one huge quest in order to save these oracles and the world again. And so you have the Trials of Apollo, where Apollo and Meg kind of find out what their quest is going to be. You have the Dark Prophecy, where again, you're truly finding out the prophecy, what the quest is going to be, what they're trying to find, the oracles, and all that fun shenanigans. The Burning Maze, where you go back into the labyrinth and you have more fun adventures. It's a little bit dark, I'll tell you. It's more dark than I think Riordan has gone to before, which I do appreciate because he has to realize that, yes, he's writing a middle grade, but his audience is growing, and just because it's a middle grade doesn't mean it can't be dark. Students and kids need to learn any type of lesson in these books. So, you know, whatever. The Tyrant's Tomb and The Tower of Nero, which is the book that just came out this month. So, I mean, it's a middle grade. I enjoyed how the series ended and how you get to see characters from every single series I've talked about so far. You have characters you haven't seen since Percy Jackson and the Olympians getting a callback. You have characters from the Blood of Olympus getting a callback. And these myths keep popping up and you get reminded of them. But out of the three that I just mentioned, the Trials of Apollo weren't my favorite. I just thought it was very predictable, and I thought it was the least exciting, honestly, of the series. And because you're with Apollo, you know that it's going to end up how it ends up. So those are my thoughts on this series. Moving on to the next, not really in the 3 series category, but also still within the world, is the Kane Chronicles. And I say it's in this world because there are, I guess, callbacks to Percy Jackson in here. Like, oh, don't go over to that side of the city, it's other gods there. But other than that, there's not too much crossover, and that I do appreciate. Rick Riordan was trying to find a different way to introduce new gods into a new series that is out of this series, but still available for students to enjoy. Which, yes, that's awesome. Let's do it. So, the Kane Chronicles were written because Rick Riordan was actually a middle school teacher, and he found that Egyptian gods were the gods that young students would know the most outside of Greek and Roman. Because in the United States education system, you actually learn Greek and Egyptian history, ancient history, when you're in 6th grade, I believe. So he knew that, and he thought the fact that this series was out would be a great opportunity for these kids to learn Egyptian mythology in a different way than just in the regular classroom, which I agree with. These books give you all that information. Rick Riordan is amazing at modernizing these myths, but still telling you where they're at. This series is a little bit different than what Riordan typically writes. They're alternating point of views from the sibling pair that are the protagonists. You have Carter and Sadie. And I really enjoyed it. It's reading like as if a transcript was given to the author about these two siblings retelling their tale. And that I did enjoy because it's like this banter between them throughout the series. And as someone who has an older brother, so true. So true. It was beautiful. And these siblings are also not demigods. They are not descended from these gods, which I also enjoyed because it takes a break from Riordan's usual demigod writing that I just read 15 books from. So, good for you, Riordan. Now, on the other hand, these two are powerful magicians. Magicians. Yeah, sure, let's go with that word. They can use magic because they're descended from pharaohs. I'll take it, sure. But overall, they are fighting for the first 2 books, fighting and hiding from the House of Light, who controls the Egyptian musicians. I'm not saying that word right, I'm sorry. But they just don't want to be caught, but they're still saving the world from an evil snake, what it comes down to. Very evil snake that could destroy the world. Gotta love it. You have Bass, who ends up being the family cat and also teaches them how to fight. You have an evil snake trying to take over the world. You have Ra, who turns into a childlike mindset. I mean, it's a fun series, and I did enjoy it to an extent, but it didn't really catch my attention, and I didn't fall in love with the side characters like I had in Riordan's other books. I truly only liked Carter and Sadie in these books. Maybe Bast if I want to lean a little bit towards that way, and maybe Zoe on occasion, but they weren't in it to the extent that I wanted them to be. And so, good series, tells you a lot about Egyptian mythology, and it was just fine. I wouldn't read it again personally, but I would highly recommend it to my students if they ever wanted to learn about Egyptian mythology. So yeah, good middle grade fantasy. That's my take. Now, Magnus Chase, on the other hand, I personally enjoyed it immensely and I would reread it. Magnus Chase is about the Norse gods. I mean, it's in the title, Gods of Asgard, that's Norse. And it's connected to the Percy Jackson series because of Chase. Annabeth Chase is Magnus's cousin. So Annabeth is actually in this series a little bit, and Percy makes an appearance as well. Little weird thing that I actually didn't need, but since it's in this series, why not, I guess? I don't know. It's more connected than I would say the Kane Chronicles is connected. Anyway, Magnus Chase ends up dying pretty fast in this book, and he is sent to Norse afterlife. Which, yes, because guess what? Norse afterlife is all about heroes. So it's heroes from forever. Like, his roommates there was a guy from the Civil War. It was one of his hallmates, and it was just a funny set of characters in this book that I truly enjoyed. And so this first one is about Magnus finding a sword, who ends up having a personality. A sword has a personality, because why not? And then the second one is about Magnus trying to find Thor's hammer, because of course it's lost. Yeah, let's do it. And then the third one is truly about Magnus trying to defeat Loki, which coincidentally is 2 of his best friend's father. Yeah, let's do it. Let's create that plotline. But I found this series incredibly fun to read. There's such a wide range of characters and just fun laughs, and it's so fantastical that I just didn't get that actually in even Percy Jackson. Even with the Greek mythology, Norse mythology is so out there, and I'm here for it. Not to mention the diverse range of characters Riordan wrote for this book. You have Sam, who is a American Muslim who wears a hijab, and she talks about Ramadan, all while she is a badass Valkyrie warrior. Yes, I am here for that character. And then you also have Heath, who is an elf, and he is deaf and only speaks in ASL, but he becomes a sorcerer at the end, and yes, we need that. And then another character I absolutely loved, because they are awesome, is Alex Fierro, who is a child of Loki, and they are gender fluid. And Riordan has Magnus grapple with this, and then ultimately is just like, yeah, let's do this. And it's beautiful. Because yes, gender fluid characters are needed in stories more. And I know Riordan is a white male author, and he does not have experience in any of these categories, but the idea that he wrote this first story in 2003? 2005, for his dyslexic son to see himself in a book, and he goes all the way to, when was this made? And he goes 10 years later in 2015 and writes such a wide range of characters so other kids can see themselves in books. We need more authors willing to do this, as well as more diverse authors writing books and getting their books published. That's all I'm saying. I would put this in my classroom tomorrow if I could, to let students read it. But again, highly recommend it. It's awesome. It's funny. It had me laughing out loud at times. Overall review of this series is that, or series, world, books, I don't know. Who does know? Is that I loved reading the nostalgia and rereading the nostalgia that is Percy Jackson and the Olympians. All 5 of these books brought amazing memories back, and just where I was when I first opened them. I mean, these books are quite loved, and now I put them in my own classroom so other kids can enjoy them on a typical year. And as a middle grade, Riordan does a wonderful job slowly introducing the idea of more characters, more learning, and you truly get to know, what is it now? It's 4 mythologies now, and that's just awesome. You have another series that gives you a great idea of a new concept and a new magical system that wasn't in any of these other series. Even though in the Kane Chronicles there was just something about it that didn't entice me as the other series did. And then you have the Magnus Chase series that, yes, it's different, but a lot of things are the same as Percy Jackson, but why not? And then of course you have an intense style that Riordan has. In every one of these books, there's so many puns, there's so many laughs. You have such a sassiness to his writing that I enjoy so much, and I'm here for it. Sassiness is a must. Yes. And you have really strong characters in all of them. And on top of that, you have Riordan growing as an author and knowing that he is such a popular author with a popular brand. And he uses that, honestly, for good. He uses that to demonstrate that there's more than just one type of character. There's more than just one type of story. And having those redemption stories and having those hero stories, but in different ways. You enter grief, you enter new life, you enter conflict with friends, and it's just wonderful to see. Or hope when there's no hope to be found, or a hero finding out that there is hope for a future when they didn't think there was one. It's really nice to see, and especially to see it in the light that really young minds are reading this. And so my final thoughts are just, it's a good series, and it's definitely one that I would never mind having in my library. I don't know if I'd recommend reading all these books all at once like I did. I was definitely getting fatigued, and by the time that the Tower of Nero came out this month, I was just really happy I was going to be done with this whole series. I might pick it up again in 2 years when I'm ready to, but do yourself a favor if you have a young person in your life or you just need something light and fun to read. Any of these books are good to read, and I would suggest them. So those are my final thoughts. 3 months of reading and 21 books. And I hope somewhere, somehow it was helpful for you. Have a wonderful day. If you liked this content at all, I post on Tuesdays and Fridays. Bye.